au sujet de l'écologie décoloniale. La séance se déroulera en anglais et vous êtes encouragés à vous rapprocher, vous asseoir sur le tapis ou sur ces chaises qui sont près de nos trois artistes. Good afternoon and welcome back to this second session in our weekend focus on decolonial ecology. This weekend's programs, as well as last weekend's programs about cosmopolitan rurality, were prepared in close collaboration with Now Project, an important contemporary art fund with a focus on sustainability. And we have with us here today Jorge Gonzalez, who created Now Project, who had the vision to today support artists who are working at the coalface of bringing together artistic research, creative experimentation, and critical thinking to do with ecology, climate change, and sustainability issues more broadly. And also the CEO, Christopher Grimes, who we've worked with very closely to develop these programs. Now projects have a network of artists that they work with over the long term in order to be able to accompany them and really create the possibility of longer term change and projects that will have impact in different ways across not only the art world, so the concept. As for Cosmopolis, is very much art in life rather than conversations that are separate from life. Today, this afternoon, the second session, we will have 3 interesting presentations of case studies relating to the work of Elena Mazzi Chiara Sgaramella and Valentina Karga. They will then present together with the audience an experimental workshop in order to go further in finding ways beyond our current binary frameworks for knowledge production. And then we'll discuss that process afterwards. These new formats and protocols for artist pedagogies is something that Cosmopolis is very interested in, and our network of artists have often brought some of those processes into the Cosmopolis space. So we're very happy to continue this focus in this session. So I'll just speak to you a little bit more about our 3 artists who will present to you. Valentina Karga is Greek-born but based in Berlin. She often works in different ways with participation and collaboration, also around issues of commoning and sustainability. So she is very much involved in these forms of prototyping that I was speaking of alternative pedagogic structures, social and economic structures. Elena Mazzi is an Italian artist whose work is based on anthropological participatory observation, and her projects look in different ways at the relationship between local cultures and global changes. And Chiara Sgaramella, who is also Italian, explores the relationship between the human and non-human within natural ecosystems, and does this through her theoretical research, art practice, and curatorial practice. And she's currently living in Spain, completing a PhD. So I think that will be, I'll hand over now to the 3 of you. And please do come and sit down closely on these fat boys that we put out here so that we can all be ready to take part in the participative session. Thank you. Over to you.
Hello? Yes. Hi. I'm Elena Mazzi. First of all, thanks for the invitation, Catherine, and now for the support. We're really happy to be here, and we decided today to start with some research case studies we're working on instead of showing our complete work, which is not the frame to do. So I wanted to invite you to share with me a project that I've been observing since many years, actually since 2011. It's a research on Mapuche population in South America, Argentina. So Mapuche, if we look at the map, we will see where they are basically living at the moment. It's originally Chilean population, and then they moved to Argentina and they spread out. It's a very interesting community for many different reasons that I will talk a little bit about after a little video I wanted to show you. So I decided to start with their words, and then I will tell you why I started this research. Sorry, not my laptop.
Desde que pisé Europa en estos días, Italia en particular, me he sentido
Just a second.
Desde que pisé Europa en estos días, Italia en particular, me he sentido sofocada, agobiada por un pensamiento.
Since I arrived in Europe and specifically in Italy in the last years, I felt with a kind of load above me that was a thinking that I had.
¿Cómo traerles hasta ustedes el sonido del río, de las montañas, de los bosques?
That is, how could I bring to you the sound of the river, of the mountain, of the water?
En una Patagonia que hoy está de muerte.
And from a Patagonia that now is in danger for its own life.
Aquí se ha hablado mucho sobre el extractivismo económico, ambiental, pero no he escuchado hablar sobre el extractivismo cultural.
I've heard talking a lot about extractivism on the political, economic side, but still I haven't heard somebody talking about cultural extractivism.
Esto es un tema no menor, es el tema estructural.
And this is an issue that's not less important. It's an issue that is the structure of the question.
Porque no estamos frente a una crisis ambiental, económica, a una crisis social, estamos frente a una crisis civilizatoria.
Because we are not in front of a crisis, environmental crisis, economical crisis, political crisis. We are facing a crisis of a civilization.
Y esa crisis me llena de mucha alegría porque quiero que esta matriz civilizatoria desaparezca.
And this crisis makes me very happy because I am hoping that this civilization, this matrix of civilization is going to disappear.
Nuestra visión de cómo habitar el mundo es tan diferente a la que ha surgido en Occidente.
Our way of thinking of the world is so different from the ones that was born in the Western world.
Durante miles y miles de años, el pueblo mapuche y las naciones indígenas en América
For thousands and thousands of years, Mapuche nations and natives population of Latin America
hemos entendido que habitamos un territorio, pero que ese territorio también nos habita.
we thought that we used to inhabit in a territory, but at the same time, the same territory is inhabiting us.
El espíritu de la montaña, el espíritu del río, el espíritu de la selva, ese espíritu también está dentro mío.
The spirits of the river, of the mountain, of the woods is within ourselves and is a spirit that is mine too.
Porque siempre tendemos a defender lo que podemos ver y tocar, ese mundo tangible.
Because we always tend to defend what we can touch, the world that can be touched, the material world.
Entonces hablamos de un ecosistema o de un medio ambiente que podemos, en el que vivimos y nos vemos.
And we talk about environment in which we live, and we intend that is what we can touch and what we see.
Pero también hay un ecosistema espiritual, un ecosistema perceptible.
But there is also a spiritual environment.
Y ese es el que primero se vio afectado con la llegada del conquistador.
And this was the first environment that has been affected by the conquer of America.
Nosotras sabemos que hay fuerzas de la naturaleza que están despertando al mundo, que están despertando no solamente a los seres humanos, están despertando a los animales, están despertando a las plantas. No solamente el humano está luchando, o por lo menos un sector de la humanidad luchando para parar esta locura de muerte.
We know that there are a lot of spirits that are waking up to wake up not just human beings, or at least a part of human beings that are struggling, but also animals, also plants, because not only this sector of human beings is struggling against this deathly system.
Nosotros, pueblos indígenas, estamos observando lo que están haciendo otras especies, otros animales, para resguardar la vida.
We Mapuche people, we are looking at the way other animals are rising up to defend life.
Estamos viendo que están retornando espíritus antiguos de la tierra que habían desaparecido.
We are observing that ancient spirits that they seem disappeared, now they are coming back to our land.
Y estamos teniendo sueños.
And we are having dreams.
Pero esos sueños, esos saberes que llegan de estas fuerzas espirituales, una sociedad que ha perdido el código para discernir, para entender, le resulta difícil valerse de esas herramientas.
But we understand that the spirits cannot be understood by a society that lost completely the code to understand and to be aware of what these dreams are saying.
Porque este sistema nos ha ido domesticando.
Because this system has been making us more and more domestic.
Y nos ha dicho cuáles son las conductas apropiadas de un humano civilizado.
And taught us which are the correct behaviors for a civilized human being.
Y entonces hemos perdido la capacidad que teníamos para hablar con la tierra.
And so we lost the ability we used to have to talk and communicate with the earth.
So this happened this summer during the cinema festival in Venice, and Moira Millan is an activist from the Mapuche population. She's traveling around Europe sometimes, some periods of the year, to spread the word about what's going on in Patagonia. And actually I got involved in this because in 2011 I was invited in Treviso to make a project about the right party, the racist party, taking over there and try to control the cultural system there. And I found out that Benetton company, the clothes company, was really like also controlling all the cultural system there. And making research, I found out that actually Benetton owns 900,000 hectares in Patagonia, so 3 times the size of Italy. And I felt I had to discover more about this, and talking about the land, researching about the land, I discovered that the land he was interested in was this land, the land in Patagonia belonging to the Mapuche. And what is tricky about that is that the land belongs to the Mapuche, but the Argentinian constitution says everything that was not written on paper could be taken over. I mean, this is the problem of all South America and also Asia, so that's not even the point to discuss. But so they really fought to keep their land, and they really struggled. So I decided I was going to Argentina for other reasons, and I decided I want to meet them. So I went to meet them in a small village, one of the different villages where they stay. So in the years, in the centuries, they decided not to have cities. They decided to communicate through social networks today. They decided to travel with their mediums. And this was not possible anymore since the 90s because Benetton decided to close some of their paths. So rivers, routes, they used quite frequently. And why am I talking just about Benetton? Well, first because I'm Italian, so I feel connected. But secondly, because Benetton is actually using it in his communication as a visual campaign. So then it becomes also my topic because I work with visual too. So these images I'm showing are some images that I took from the internet, but also are images that I took by myself. This is one of the fences that they were showing me Benetton fenced. And these are some of the community resisting for their lands. So like they just claim their lands using old techniques of fighting in the war, just by putting fires, like showing their presence around. There are very interesting ways to fight that we completely lost and that belongs also to our culture in a way. This is a radio that has been established by Yabasta Association. It's an association in Europe that helps indigenous population to fight for their rights. So in Treviso is the only other voice you have, not really kind of being supported by Benetton. And so they decided to give them a radio so they could communicate in Mapuche language through different villages and different cities, and it's the only way to have a free speech at the moment. But what is mostly interesting to me is that at one point, at the beginning of 2000, Benetton decided to create a museum in Leleke, where you see the dot on the right image, to kind of dedicate it to Mapuche community as they were then. So it's a museum that takes back the color of Benetton. You have 4 rooms. I've been there, and there's a red room, there's a yellow room, there's a green room, and there's a blue room. And there the story is completely changed on the other side. So when they opened it, they were outside claiming for their presence since 2000, and the Italian television, the public Italian television, censored this part. So they just filmed some part of the museum where you can see this very interesting maquette of the indigenous double side compared to the conquest. And when I tried to take pictures inside the museum, they said I couldn't. So this is just what I could take, like sneaking out. And this is a picture I took last week in a vitrine in Milan. So this is how this is the Mapuche flag on top, and this is how Benetton then reuse all the elements that they take from their imaginary, from the community or from the living with the population, because of course they convinced some of them to work for them by paying them, but some others resisted, and actually is one of the best samples of resistance we have in South America. At the moment, what I'm trying to do is to work on jewels. So as you saw in the previous video, Moira Millan, she's wearing these amazing big jewels in silver. And why they do this? Because during one of the conflicts they had back in the 18th century with the Spanish, at one point they had a peace, and the medium to exchange or to, let's say, consolidate this peace was to give them, to exchange silver somehow, to create new objects, new traditional objects to use in their rituals. And jewels were the first thing they started to make, and they work not just as jewels, but as a sort of tableau vivant, as medium to be performed during the rituals. So what you see engraved in some of them, or the shapes at the same time, they are signs related to their relationship with the land. For them, the land is completely important, is the basis of everything, as you heard from the video. So these signs or these drawings, these engravings, they arrived, let's say, until the 70s, the 80s, and they started to have this conflict with big companies. So they stopped making them because they run out of money, they don't have the silver anymore, and they have other things to focus on. So there's a lack of relationship with the land, discourse about the land from the 90s on. So I proposed to Mauro Millan, which is the cousin of Moira. He is an artist, and he is also the spiritual leader, because they don't have a pyramidal hierarchy, they just have a spiritual leader that is the one communicating with the outside of the world. So I met Mauro, and consequently I met Moira too. But Mauro is also a jewelry maker, so we discussed the idea to produce a new series of jewels, just by including this part of history that has been not narrated for several reasons. So now I'm making research to, let's say, collect this imaginary that has been going on from the 90s, also in the western side of the world, and then to put them together, to create these new jewels together, to give them the possibility to have new jewels, but also to bring one set to Europe and show it and talk about what's happening, and using them as in a sort of performative way to let them also come here to tell the story, and to reverse this idealistic imaginary we have on their objects that is completely wrong. So I pass the word to Chiara. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I would like to thank you, Catherine, and the curatorial team of Cosmopolis, but also NA, for the invitation. I'm really honored to be here. And before I start, I would just also thank my friends and fellow artists, Elena and Valentina, for sharing this wonderful experience. I would like to situate myself before I start speaking. I will talk from the perspective of a Western white woman from a position of privilege, and by no means I'm an expert in the theme of decolonial ecology. I will just share with you some encounters, insights, and conversations I've been lucky enough to have with artists and communities that are working at the intersection between indigenous epistemologies and ecologies. I would like to start with a small introduction, saying that the worldwide intensification of globalization dynamics that we've seen at the beginning of the 21st century has basically colonized most aspects of human life, from living organisms to urban spaces, until now it also includes our relationships are being used for extracting value. So the center of my investigation is the question of creating maybe new forms of human sociality beyond the individualistic and competitive mentality that we have especially in the Western world. And so I would like to address this question by showing two examples of networks of collaborations between social movements and also cultural and producers and artists. And one of them is in Puerto Rico, and the other one in Valencia, where I'm currently based. And in order to do so, sorry, I just went to the wrong one. I think there is a very important Colombian anthropologist called Arturo Escobar, whose ideas are, in my opinion, very insightful. He talks about the current ecological and social crisis as the crisis of world-making practices that belong to the West. And in so many other parts of the world, there are other ontologies that he calls relational ontologies, in which, as he defines them, there are no beings that pre-exist the relationships and their interactions that they create with other beings. So basically, we cannot exist without the relationships that conform us. And that is why I'm looking at these two examples. The first one, as I told you, is in Puerto Rico. Here you can see an image of the hurricane season in the North Atlantic in 2017. That was pretty dramatic for this archipelago. As you know, Puerto Rico is a small archipelago. You can see it here. It's very tiny, formed by three islands. And as you may see in the evolution of the hurricanes that are marked by those points and colors, it was struck by two really strong hurricanes called Irma and Maria in 2017. And these hurricanes created the most dire forms of destruction, both as you can see in the ecosystems, but also in communities and in urban spaces. Many lives were lost, and also the infrastructures and basic services like water supply and the power grid also were destroyed and were restored with a great effort. Like there were communities that were deprived of power or water during many months. As you can see, some pictures I took from a reportage from the New York Times, but these are some I took when I was there during my research stay. And in response to this catastrophe, the local communities created a network that is called Red de Apoyo Mutuo. We can translate it like a network of mutual support in Puerto Rico. And this happened because the federal agencies of the US proved totally inefficient in the face of this traumatic experience. And I found this case very interesting because Puerto Rico is nowadays basically living in a colonial status, de facto. It was, of course, a Spanish colony until 1898, when during the Spanish-American War it passed under the influence of the United States. And nowadays it is called Estado Libre Asociado, but really the citizens of Puerto Rico have no voice in Congress because they do not vote for representatives in Congress in the US, and they cannot vote also in the presidential election. So it really is a colonial status, both politically and economically and also culturally. They're really creating a lot of resistance, and that is really brave of them through their cultural and also their language, protecting their language, because there have been many attempts by the US to impose the English language, but they they chose to stay with the Spanish language. So this network, what it did was put together a lot of collective and organizations on the territory in order to provide basic services in the face of the catastrophe. For example, first aid, relief, water, and food supplies. But also it organized a series of cultural events that also helped recreate a community that was completely disgregated and living in a situation of trauma. And one of the most significant experience I came across was the work of Jorge Gonzalez. He founded in 2014, and still ongoing, a project that is called Escuela de Oficios in Puerto Rico, and it's very interesting because he is reclaiming the Taíno culture through these crafts that were supposed to be dead, but it's actually, there's a big population of Taíno descendants that still cultivates these practices, and they also use local materials, mostly plant-based, and pottery and clays from the local mountains. And the weekly workshop, it's a weekly workshop that has been running for many years, is a collaborative place where these crafts are translated into a more contemporary language. But it's also a social space where families and people could just start conversation and talk and share feelings of loss about this deeply traumatic experience. I will now talk briefly also about my personal experience in Valencia, and to explain this connection. I think also in Europe in the global north in general, we should decolonize our imaginary, because there are forms of colonization that also take place within our societies. There are traditional cultures and rural practices that are being constantly colonized by the neoliberal narrative. And this is really evident in the cities. Valencia is just one example. These practices I'm describing are happening everywhere in the world. And here I'm showing another network of collaboration and of common struggle that is called Valencia no está en venda, which means Valencia is not on sale. And I find it really interesting because here you can see the intersection of different struggles. The first one is the defense of the territory, because Valencia is situated in a very fertile plain that has been at the center of agricultural practices for more than 1,000 years. And this system of small properties and orchards for food production is called horta in the local Valencian languages, and was created by the Arabs when they first came to these lands. And is very important because it could provide the city with food sovereignty, and it also provides a lot of ecosystem services, but it's now being threatened by the construction of big highways and other infrastructures, but also for development, for the use of land for speculative objectives. So there are collectives in these networks that work to protect this land and maintain traditional agricultural practices, but also there are other networks, other collectives, that struggle against other capitalist and extractivist practices. For example, the gentrification of the city, the transformation of the city into a tourist amusement park in some areas, and phenomenon like the skyrocketing of rent for housing that is really evicting vulnerable collectives from the city, especially migrants and women. So here you can see like the intersection of many different issues into one. And this is just one of the images of the destruction. This was just a few weeks ago. In the horta, in this orchard system, for the construction of a new highway, they destructed this form de barraca is like a common oven that they had for the production of bread, and it was more than 100 years old, and it was squatted by the activists as a symbol, not to destroy the building and also the 60,000 square meters of land around it. But the police just came in, and in a matter of few hours they just got rid of it. It was completely brought to the ground. And here also in this network, just like in the Puerto Rican one, the artists have had like really important role, even though they are not the main protagonists. And that's what it's interesting for me, like what art can add, what artistic imagination can contribute to these struggles. And they have brought a lot of attention to these topics with the creation of images, the organization of mural painting festivals, and other initiatives that have helped make this situation visible in the public eye. I believe these networks are of particular interest because they create interspecies, but also intergenerational alliances, and also alliances between different collectives within society, and help us somehow create alternative social natural worlds, alternative narratives to the dominant ones. And just to conclude, I would like to say that this research I'm carrying out is very much indebted to a methodology of mapping and cartography that was somehow devised by artist Rogelio Lopez Cuenca, which I knew about and could practice during a 6-month workshop in Valencia. And the aim of this outer cartography is to reverse the narration, the capitalist and neoliberal narration about spaces. It has been applied to many cities around the world. Rogelio has been traveling and really working with communities. And during these 6 months, what we tried to do was to take like a tourist map of Valencia and just change it, and make visible those narratives that normally are silenced. In some of them were struggles by subaltern communities. Some others were narratives about public spaces of cultural production that normally you don't find anywhere in the history books or in other official sources, etc. And the result was the publication of this book that's called Radical Geographics. It's kind of a panel of words on the National Geographic that's really the symbol of colonial exploration and also the colonization of knowledge and research. So thank you very much, and I pass the word to my friend Valentina.
So hello also from me, and thank you again to Catherine and Cosmopolis, the NAF, and the whole team here that is running this wonderful project, and of course to my fellow artists and friends. I'm also very happy to be here, and thank you for listening to us. I would really invite the people who are standing, if they want to come and use these pillows that we stole from the video projection there. So it's such a pity not to use them, since we already stole them from the others. Yeah, so Elena and Chiara talked about communities of people that they have met. They traveled there, they met and talked to these people and learned about their struggles. So I want to talk to you about people that I haven't met because they are dead. They are very, very dead, like long time dead, because they are from the prehistoric times, they're not contemporary people. So I don't really have access to them to go and talk to them. So I was hoping you can help me a little bit out, and this is what I'm asking in general to people that I talk about them, my imaginary friends, to help me out, because I cannot really access all this information by myself, because it's not really written in any books, like there are no books that document exactly prehistoric times, because there was no written language in prehistoric times, you know, and since we don't have written record, we cannot really be very sure. So it's an area in archaeology and in science that is very much speculative. You know, even the archaeologists themselves, they speculate, but nobody can be really sure about it. So I started doing this research and looking at all these drawings. We have lots of drawings and lots of small sculptures from those people, and lots of different theories. And one of those theories, the most maybe prominent one, is that the people in prehistoric times were organized in a matriarchal way. You know, like how today we have patriarchy and everybody is organized around patriarchy. Like in prehistory, we were living in this lovely world where women, and not only women, but in general, this more feminine energy was kind of organizing the society and the economy and all aspects of life, no? And actually, when this theory emerged, it was quite popular. There was this archaeologist who I personally admire very much. Her name was Maria Gimbutas. She was from Lithuania, and she was an archaeologist in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, around that time. And of course, in Lithuania, she would never be recognized as a scientist. So she left and she went to the States, and there she got a job at the university, and she was very much recognized for her. She did like, I don't know how many excavations like that from the Neolithic times. She was focusing in the Neolithic times. But after she formulated this theory of the great goddess, that was her theory, then she was slowly marginalized in the academic world, because people were criticizing her approach that, you know, in prehistory women had such an important role. But at the same time, she was very much appreciated from the New Age movement, together with James Lovelock and the Gaia hypothesis, which is a book that we suddenly discuss very much today because Bruno Latour wrote about it. And his theory was, in a way, a little bit, you know, following along these lines of the ancient goddess Gaia, the Mother Earth, that Maria Gimbutas believed all these sculptures were also representing. That was the main big organism that was organizing life on Earth, basically. So the whole Earth is one big organism that gives birth and rebirth to all its living forms on the planet. So at this moment, actually, I'm working through drawings and through text on my own speculative theory about prehistory. And this theory basically claims that the prehistoric people were not patriarchal or matriarchal because they were beyond binary logic. So this means that they were maybe what we call nowadays post-human, no? And post-human, for those of you who don't know, and it's good that you don't know because nobody expects you to know, it's a very niche discussion in philosophy. But the post-human basically means, going beyond this binary logic as human species, and even beyond our humanity itself, no? So post-humans claim that this feminist struggle, like it's only one symptom of a much larger and deeper struggle in duality. So we have, you know, female and male. We have, what else I have here? I forgot. We have humans and non-humans. We have nature and technology, no? That's a really big dichotomy in all our lives. Or nature and culture, how it was, you know, a little bit earlier. And basically it all comes down to I, myself, and not I, you know, me and not me. So me and the other, whatever other this is. And this is the basic struggle of all social problems, you know, this separation that, you know, I have this kind of interest, you have that kind of interest, our interests don't match, and then I will, you know, come, I'll kill you and take your land, and, you know, the basis of colonialism, what we're discussing here as well. So my belief is that these people, as you see them in these drawings, and Bertrand, Christopher, you're having one, and Ilaria has another one under her seat. Maybe you can take it and show it a little bit to our guests here. Like, if you observe these prehistoric drawings, of course they have some female characteristics, but they also look a little bit like plants or animals or some kind of alien species, you know, so you cannot say that these were only women. This is so much more than that, no? And what I'm speculating is that exactly prehistory, because it was before the formulation of language, and language is very much dividing in order, you know, to make meanings more clear. People were much more interconnected, you know, so our ancestors, basically, because they were also kind of humans, they had a much more broader sense of what does it mean to be a human, and much less separation between themselves and not only their other fellow people, but also all kinds of other creatures, or even non-living entities such as the water or the soil and so on. And this is my speculative theory about prehistory. And so now we would like actually to invite you to do a little exercise together. And we brought some paper and some markers. And this exercise is very friendly actually for people who don't like to speak in public, because we totally understand, you know, that you don't want to engage and do make questions, because it's a silent conversation, meaning that you don't really have to speak, you just need to maybe write or draw, you know, intervene on this piece of paper about all of these things that you heard. Yeah, in a very, very free way. Yeah? So how would you feel about that? To come and...
A marker or scissors also you can cut out instead of drawing if you don't feel like drawing.
Maybe we can give some papers to the people. Yeah. Yeah, I have some more. Pens. Do you all have pens? Great. We also have to do it. Great. So before we go into writing, I would like to invite you all to close your eyes for a moment and take some deep breaths and feel at ease and feel relaxed. And concentrate on sending your energy down to the ground and imagine to grow roots, from your legs that penetrate the layers of this building and reach into the soil. And now you're already a kind of a semi-tree, semi-human. And then from there, call to a version of yourself to manifest in front of you. So visualize basically yourself sitting right in front of you. And as you observe how you look like, maybe some things, some of your characteristics will start to shift a little bit. What are these characteristics that I'm trying to shift? Can you help them shift and change even more? Can you allow this transformation of yourself to take place? And then slowly come back into your own body and open your eyes. So I hope you got a small glimpse of your prehistoric post-human selves. And we would like to invite you now to take the paper and your pen and really just write down the first things that come on your mind after this whole input that we gave you. Or just draw something, like whatever that is, it doesn't really matter. Just something honest and something from your heart.
So the idea is that soon we will try to make a circle, so you pass your sheet of paper to the person to your right, and we will do the same. So so people in the second circle, let's say, if we can try to find a way to be a unique circle. So people in the first row maybe can consider people behind you. Yeah. Or enlarge, as you prefer. And then, when you're done, you pass the sheet to your right, and you will do the same action to the sheet that you will receive, considering what's on it. And we will try to do a full circle like this. So you do the same on the sheet of paper you get, considering what's on it. So you intervene with it.
If you want to intervene, to add something, a question mark, I don't know, yeah.
We are considering 2 minutes per passage, more or less. Okay, if you're ready, you change again, always to your right.
Okay, now we have to change again. Again to the right. Don't worry, we're going to do this multiple times still. And we change again. And now we change again.
ready to change.
And we are changing.
Change.
And we change again. And we change one more time. And we can change again.
and change again.
Okay, I think it's because people left on the way that we will not end up having our own papers ever back, you know, which was the goal. Which is hilarious. But maybe we can just now keep passing papers just until we find our own paper. And if we, yeah. So, yeah, that's not, yeah, there it is. It's coming, yeah. I mean, mine. Now it's everything is everybody's, but of course, the original ones. The bear. So this is what we prepared for you today. It's of course the silent conversation. It's a format that it's open source, so everybody can use it. We did not invent it. You can find information about it on the internet if you just search for silent conversation. We would like to ask you to write, if you want, on the backside of your papers your emails. So we can scan with very clear letters. So we can scan them and send them to you, send the whole package to you as a small outcome of what we see here today. And now it's the time, if anybody wants to share something or ask a question or say something, you can do it now. Or else be silent forever.
I just wanted to say that these are incredible artist books made in 20 minutes, first of all. And then it's interesting to see what happened to your first drawing, no? Like, I'm just having a look at mine, which became a landscape, and actually I started with mountains, so it makes sense. And then it ends with a sentence saying we are all nomads, which is beautiful. And but I would like to have a look also at the other ones, so while you comment or you think about yours, I'm just gonna have a look at them.
I would like to thank you for this exercise. I think it's really wonderful to see how, you know, some small drawing can become, as Elena was saying, like a complex landscape of interconnection, and also the comments. I think one of the sentences I like most on mine says, "Let yours be mine, let mine be yours." And also the stories inside our bones. And I can pass it around, so if you want to have a look at it. Anyone else who wants to share insights or comments, observations?